Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for September 11th, 2018. Madam Clerk, first item.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, instruction to negotiator regarding potential purchase, price, and terms of payment for the following property affected by the Single Tree Drive over Little Johns Creek Low Water Crossing Conversion New Bridge Project. Agency negotiator Stephen Harris of Overland, Pacific and Cutler, LLC, negotiating party, and respective property APN Linda R. Efasimo as to 054-003-016.
Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, item number 2 in closed session.
Item 2 is conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, instruction to negotiator regarding potential purchase, price, and terms of payment for the following properties affected by the Hogan Dam Road over Bear Creek Low Water Crossing Conversion New Bridge Project. Agency negotiator Stephen Harris of Overland, Pacific and Cutler, LLC, negotiating parties and respective property APNs Milton T. and Luann M. Hyde as to 050-008-013, Frederick P. and Frank R. Hulbert as to APN 050-008-041, and Charles Jr. and Rosario Pineda as to APN 050-008-042.
Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, item number 3.
Item 3, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Andrew Greer and Golden State Herb Incorporated, and Adam Ray et al. Versus Calaveras County et al., Calaveras County Superior Court Case Number 18CV43460.
Any public comments on this item?
Good morning. This one brings me no pleasure to make this comment, but before you go into closed session to discuss the Greer Measure C litigation, I feel I ought to mention for the record and to the public that members of this county government asserted that Measure C taxes were illegal and would have to be refunded, even as they were collecting and spending them over a year ago. So it's fitting that this comes up at the start of the board's final budget hearings. More on that later. The aforementioned email, it came to my attention through an email from a PRA that's been circulated, and I just emailed this to all of you, including the clerk and county council, for your reference. Originating from Supervisor Mills on July 23rd of 2017 to Tim Lutz and Brian Moss. Reads, Tim and Brian, as you recall, Measure C states the tax applies to those that are licensed. The English use of the word license, or of the use of the words, to permit an activity to be conducted. In the impartial analysis for the ballot, the county council uses the terms licensed and registrant in the same sentence. The word registrant is not on the ballot measure, and I refer to the English use of the word registrant, which is defined as one who is on a list. The words are not interchangeable, therefore registrants are not an approved category under Measure C taxation. Thinking of this in terms of a broker, you can be on a list registered but not licensed, in other words, permitted to conduct an activity. Measure C allows the county to tax those that are licensed and makes the taxing of those that are registered and not licensed approved an illegal taxation. If we have collected taxes not authorized under Measure C, those monies must be returned, and this should be a closed session discussion with the board as potential litigation, which you are now about to go into closed session to discuss not potential but real and existing litigation. And I just wanted to enter this into the record and make people aware that while the public hasn't heard anything about it from the board or the county government officially and publicly, it appears some board members anyway, believed that this day would come even as they were collecting and even spending those same revenues, which we're about to discuss getting sued over. So, thank you. Good morning.
Any other public comments on this item? Seeing none, will we close to closed session? Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for September 11th, 2018. You'll rise if you can for the pledge. Supervisor Oliveira, can you please lead us?
Yes, sir. Pledge allegiance to the United States of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk.
Report of closed session held on September 4th, 2018. Public employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, Public Works Director. On a motion by Supervisor Oliveira and a second by Supervisor Mills, the board voted unanimously to direct the CAO to extend an offer to the successful candidate following the completion of a background review. The CAO will bring a resolution back to the board to memorialize the appointment at the next board meeting after an offer is accepted. Report of today's closed session. Item 1, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, instruction to negotiator regarding potential purchase, price, and terms of payment for the following property affected by the single Tree Drive over Little Johns Creek Low Water Crossing Conversion New Bridge project. Agency negotiator Stephen Harris of Overland Pacific and Cutler LLC. Negotiating party and respective property APN Linda R. Efesimo as to 054-003-016. There was no reportable action taken. Item 2, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, instruction to negotiator regarding potential purchase, price, and terms of payment for the following properties affected by the Hogan Dam Road over Bear Creek Low Water Crossing Conversion New Bridge project. Agency negotiator Stephen Harris of Overland Pacific and Cutler LLC. Negotiating parties and respective property APNs, Milton T. and Luann M. Hyde as to 050-008-013, Frederick P. and Frock R. Holbert as to APN 050-008-041, and Charles Jr. and Rosario Pineda as to APN 050-008-042. There was no reportable action taken. Item 3, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Andrew Greer and Golden State Herb Incorporated and Adam Ray et al. Versus Calaveras County et al. Calaveras County Superior Court case number 18CV43460. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you. You need a moment to, after all that?
I'm good.
All right, moving on to announcements.
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public. The Board of Supervisors will be recessing for lunch at 12 noon to attend the Government Center Beautification Project unveiling and ribbon cutting ceremony in the courtyard and will reconvene at 2:00 p.m. If the fiscal year 2018-19 final budget hearing is not completed today, the Board of Supervisors will continue the hearing until completed.
So, that being said, any board announcements? Supervisor Garamendi.
Yeah, I just want to, I think, we're going to talk about this other points in the program today, but today is 9/11. We have lost 7,000 U.S. servicemen and women in the last 17 years of war. But it's also, so it's a national day to remember that, but it's also a day to remember that this was day 3 of the Butte Fire, only 3 years ago. And I think it's important for all of us to recognize that many of our friends and neighbors are still suffering as a result of that fire. There's a lot of emotion around it, certainly for everybody in this county. And I just want to, everybody be sensitive to everybody else as we go through this. Let's remember the 2 lives that were lost and innumerable memories that were burnt to the ground. And just want the community just to remember that this week of 9/11 is much larger than just a national day of remembrance for our county, but a major county event as well. So let's all stick together.
Any board announcements? Seeing none, staff announcements.
Good morning, Board. Stan Moore, my team. I'm bringing along with us the GIS team, Doug Polzoni and Dan Rios. And we're happy to announce that tomorrow morning at about 5 o'clock, the county will be unveiling a new set of GIS services available through the county website. We're very excited about this. So this will be replacing current services that are used where people do data downloads, FTP. And perhaps of more use or more frequently used would be a set of new viewers. So when people are using GIS to pull up information about the county using GIS, then we will have different viewers than we have in place today. And so we think that these are going to be a lot more user-friendly and provide information that's very helpful to the general public. So we are going to do 2 sessions. This is going to have a real different look and feel. And for people who are used to GIS in today's website, it's going to be a little bit different. So to that end, we are going to offer 2 times where the public can come into the boardroom and where Doug and Dan will be doing an overview. So we're going to set that up, and we'll send out an announcement, perhaps a press release. But Friday, September 21st, from 10 o'clock until 12 o'clock in the morning, and Monday, September 24th, from 5:30 to 7:30 in the evening, we're going to invite the public to come in, or staff can obviously as well, but this is a chance for the public to come in. We've already let Al know. He's been a big proponent of a service that is coming back. And so the public can come in and see what these services are and ask questions and so on. So we look forward to this being available tomorrow morning. Doug and Dan have been working on this for quite some time, and we're really excited about it. So they're going to be happy to show what this can do for everybody. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Nancy Giddens, Calaveras County Librarian. I'm here to announce 3 things to you this morning. The first is this. Did you pass this out? These are 4 new apps that are at calaveraslibrary.com under resources. They were purchased for 2 communities in our county, one travelers, and the second are students who are doing research on places, geography, social studies research. We have an app for A to Z USA, which has very, very detailed information on every state, the territories, and Washington, D.C. A to Z World Travel, which are the cities of the world. A to world, Global Road Warrior, which I can't say very fast, which are the countries of the world. There are also downloadable maps and printable maps. So this will, I hope, meet the need of our community for those who are traveling. On each site that you open, each country, each city, each state, especially countries and cities in the world, it will give you immigration information. It will tell you what inoculations you need. It will tell you what to expect at customs, as well as giving you all kinds of things to see and things to do that are very up to date. These links are updated quarterly, usually, so the information is very, very current. For our social studies kids, the same thing. They're not going to have to go to Wikipedia. They've got a very, very reliable source of information on our countries and our cities. So these are on our website. They are a free service of the library. You do have to have a library card, so if you don't have one, get one today. Secondly, I'd like to announce that the visual reality times have been set. This month, you can go to Mars. You can explore under the sea, all kinds of fish and wildlife under the sea. You can climb Mount Everest, and you can learn to fly a plane, and there's one other that I can't remember. The times are Tuesdays, 10 to 2, 3 to 5, but also Thursdays, 4:30 to 6:30. So we're hoping that this variety of times will give everyone in the community to come to the library and experience visual reality. You do need to sign up for your half-hour slot so that you can be sure that you have some help and experience. The third thing is that our STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math sessions for our older children are now firmly established, 10:15 to 11:45 on Wednesdays, which coincides with the story time. We had 11 homeschool kids last week in the library doing something, building bridges. It was truly amazing. And a parent told me this is now a regular part of our homeschool curriculum. So we're reaching that audience, which is an audience I've been trying to reach since I came. There will be an after-school session, Thursdays, 3 to 4:30 for our school kids. We will have occasional programming on Saturdays if these times don't work for people. But all of our children can come and get amazing support for the STEAM disciplines, which are being stressed in the school and in our world. And we're hoping that this will really help our parents feel that they can prepare their kids for this world in Calaveras County. So please come to the library and participate in our programs.
Good morning, Brian Moss, Administrative Office, representing Integrated Waste Management this morning. Just wanted to report out to the board that the Calaveras County Annual Residential Household Hazardous Waste Days that were held on Saturday and Sunday this weekend, were very, very successful. Once again, I want to thank everybody that participated, the public getting involved, certainly bringing in a lot of materials, up to an estimated right now 12,119 pounds of material, which is pretty darn successful. And I also would like to acknowledge staff, because they did a wonderful job of getting the word out, participating on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was San Andreas and Arnold. Actually, my understanding is we had cars backed up before the event actually started at 9 a.m. Starting at 7 a.m., people started to back up on Linebaugh to Blagan out to the highway. So it's a very successful event. And I also just want to express to the public that lots of comments are made like, why don't we do this more often? Why do we do this annually only? And the reality is we have a facility at Rock Creek that's open 7 days a week that will receive this material. So I would encourage the public and encourage people that if they have material that they don't have to wait till once a year. We're happy to have them at this event, but certainly there's another alternative that they can access pretty much every day of the week. So thank you for that, and thank you also for getting the message out to your constituents.
Any other staff announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on. Madam Clerk.
Item 4 is from the Administrative Office to adopt a proclamation recognizing the Government Center Beautification Project.
Supervisor Garamendi, I believe you have this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to read this proclamation dedicating the beautification project of the Government Center campus. Whereas during the spring of 2017, the county facilities, maintenance, and grounds personnel commenced the beautification project of the Government Center campus. And whereas in December 2017, the County of Calaveras Facility Maintenance and Grounds Manager, Mr. Patrick Martin, applied for and received a grant in the amount of $10,000 from the Calaveras Community Foundation for the beautification project. And whereas CAL FIRE repurposed the pine trees that were affected by the bark beetle and contributed the wood building material for the beautification project, and whereas the master gardeners contributed their expertise in the election and placement of plants, and whereas the garden club contributed plants and labor to landscape a portion of the beautification project area, and whereas the facilities department acquired 800 plants, shrubs, trees, and ground cover from a local nursery for the project, and whereas on this national holiday, Patriot Day, September 11, 2018, the beautification project is dedicated to the citizens of the county of Calaveras. Is there a motion to accept this, Mr. Chair? Or any public comment?
We had public comments on it. Is there any board comment? Supervisor Olivera, your light's on.
I just want to commend Patrick and his crew for doing an outstanding job, as we saw this morning. We'll be able to formally recognize him, but I join my fellow supervisors in saying, job well done.
Supervisor Mills.
Yeah, I look at what Patrick has done out there as probably his vision that it's been wandering around in his head for a lot of years, and what it will contribute to the mental welfare of the people who work here and the people who visit here. I think it makes a lot of difference, and the turnaround is occurring within Calaveras County, and I think that what that has done is expressed we are on a different track. And Patrick, you've done an astounding job here of pulling it all together and showing us it can be done.
And I second those thoughts, and I can tell you, not only that project, it's a wonderful project, it was great. You and I had a little thing going on here with it, and you did a wonderful job, you got it done. But just the campus overall, over the last year or so, has just dramatically changed with the painting, the landscaping's changed, we're keeping it up. It's looking very nice, and kudos to you and your crew for the work and job you do. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I want to thank you for the acknowledgement, but truly my facility staff gets all the credit. My wife could tell you of all the unfinished wild ideas I have at home, they pulled it off. So I was the architect and the manager, and all the credit goes to them, but thank you.
Public comments.
Marty Crane, District 5, also Director of the Volunteer Center. And I wanted to say that at the very outset of what was happening here, I thought, what's going on? And I went to see Patrick, and he said, you know, before I moved up here, I think that's what he said, I would see on TV, the media would be in Calaveras County, and they'd be a government center, and he says, it looked abandoned. And he says, I told myself that if I ever had an opportunity, I'll see what I could do about it. And then here he is, and he jumped right on it, true to his word. So for all the volunteers out there in the community, and from a charming husband and my hearts to everybody else, we always say when community comes together, magic happens. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Any other public comments on this item?
Mike Falvey, District 2. Also kudos to everybody involved, and specifically, I assume, Mr. Martin? Mr. Martin. I don't know, about 3 years ago, I wrote a letter to the existing board, to each member, stating how funky the county looked, to be blunt, and the county center looked, and they've done a great job, so good job, sir. And everybody's helped build it, including the cons. Number 2 is, you know, our county needs to recognize people that have always done a good job of it, recognizing citizens, and we've lost a citizen in the recent past who, you know, worked most of his life to forward Calaveras County and its legacy and its businesses. And I think it would be a good idea to name that arbor in this person's honor, and Mr. Garamendi, I would hope you would introduce a proclamation naming the arbor the Barton Steveno Memorial Arbor. I, for one, would appreciate it. I don't know how that would go, but I think that would be a good recognition of a man's life well spent. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I so move we accept this proclamation.
Do I have a second?
I would second it.
I have a motion by Supervisor Oliveira, second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Now, therefore be it proclaimed, the Calaveras Board of Supervisors hereby recognizes the Calaveras Community Foundation, CAL FIRE, Master Gardeners, the Garden Club, the Facility Maintenance and Grounds Managers, Patrick Martin and all the staff for their contributions and efforts to the Calaveras County Government Center Campus Beautification Project. The project, being made from steel, stone, and timber, will forever symbolize the strength and the longevity of our Calaveras communities. Passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County, State of California, this 11th day of September 2018. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
They always block me out.
That's why I moved over.
Moving on. Madam Clerk?
Item 5 is from District 4, to adopt a proclamation honoring the Ed Gazine's service to the Copperopolis Fire Protection District.
Supervisor Mills?
Thank you, Chair. And I have the honor of reading this. It's a proclamation honoring 40 years of service by Edwin Lucian Guzine to the Copperopolis Fire Protection District. It says, whereas volunteer service is a vital part of providing for the safety and security of the citizens of Calaveras County, and without volunteers, many first responder organizations would be severely limited in the level of service they can provide. And whereas volunteers such as Edward Ed Guzine sacrifice, in many cases, years of their free time, energy, and expertise to assist first responder organizations throughout the county to provide services to the public. And whereas Ed joined the Copperopolis Fire Protection District in 1979 and served over 40 years, ultimately becoming a director on the board for 9 years until his sudden passing on June 26th of 2018.
Any board comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll open up public comment. Public comment.
You bet. I've known Kathy since she was a principal at Valley Springs Elementary. I went to the service, and it was just beautiful. It was just a wonderful gathering. You couldn't, it was shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't get more people in there. And what I wanted to say was, again, I think we should say this loud and often. When community comes together, magic happens. And this is another example of recognizing that our government should not be and cannot be everything that we need. It takes the community. So again, kudos to Kathy and Ed and the family. Remember, when community comes together, magic happens. Thank you.
Joel Schwartz, Copperopolis Fire Department. As administrative officer of the Copperopolis Fire Protection District, every month I was privileged to be on the receiving end of Ed's often probing and penetrating questions about budget allocation and expenses. He knew from firsthand experience that the reason the flashlight cost us $50 was because it absolutely positively had to work under the worst, most extreme hostile conditions. Ed's decisions were always guided by ensuring the safety and protection of Copperopolis residents, visitors, structures, grasslands, and forests. While Ed is missed, we are very lucky to have his wife Kathy joining our board, keeping his spirit and probing questions alive and well.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Vicki Mills. I guess what I want to say most is thank you, Ed, for keeping my husband safe on all the strike teams you guys went on throughout the state. Ed did an amazing service to not only Calaveras County and Copperopolis as far as fire protection, but he was on every strike team during those years that he could. He wanted to protect the whole state from fire. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Other public comments?
George Fry. I arrived here in October of 1977. And it was near that day that I first met Ed Gutzine. Everything that's been said about him is absolutely true. He was a wonderful person, always doing good things for our Calaveras County community. And I'm happy to have known him. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good morning. My name is Eddie Gazine. I'm one of the sons of Ed Gazine. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Supervisor Mills as well as the rest of the board for taking the time and the care to create this document. It means a lot to our family. Thank you.
Other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board, looking for a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Supervisor Clapp,
Second.
second by Supervisor Oliveira. Any other comments? Not? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Board. It says, now therefore be it proclaimed on this day, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors commends Ed Gazine and the 40 years of service he dedicated to his community as a first responder, holding the safety of the citizens as an utmost priority, passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Calaveras, State of California, this 11th day of September, 2018. Could the family come forward?
All right, moving on. Madam Clerk, item 6.
Item 6 is from District 1 to adopt a proclamation recognizing the week of September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week in Calaveras County.
Supervisor Oliveira?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a correction. We made a last-minute change to District 3. This is a proclamation recognizing the week of September 17th through September 23rd, 2018, as Constitution Week in Calaveras County. Whereas, the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas, September 17, 2018, marks the 231st anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas, it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary. and to the patriotic celebrations which will commensurate it. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. I'd like to add a personal note. I believe in the Constitution and the oaths I take to this country, and I welcome every citizen of this nation to give thanks we had the forbearing knowledge of our forefathers who drafted the Constitution. That is not in the proclamation. Those are my own words.
Any other board comments? No? We'll open for public comment. Other public comment on this item?
I'm Will Moore from District 5, Rancho Calaveras, and I noticed that this proclamation contains this phrase, limited government. And this is a catchphrase of the conservative right. Use it all the time. But what we have, we already have limited government. We already have government limited to serving special interests. So instead of government of the people, for the people, and by the people, we've got government of corporate plutocracy, by corporate plutocracy, for corporate plutocracy. The Constitution clearly lays out that the Congress of the United States clearly has a constitutional mandate to collect taxes and pay the bills, which they've been avoiding doing for the last 80 years or so. They borrow to pay the bills instead of collecting the taxes to pay the bills. So how do we pay that loan back? I mean, so-called conservatives have borrowed this country $20 trillion into debt rather than collect the taxes to pay the bills. So who's going to collect the taxes to pay back what we already borrowed and spent? I say yes, let's get back to the Constitution and support the general welfare instead of special interests. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this item?
Al Segala, the Taxpayer Association. Our group has been a strong supporter of the Constitution, and we think a lot of the problems that we're facing today would not exist if we paid more close attention to the Constitution. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution allows for the federal government to do only those things specified in the Constitution, and then those things that are not specified are left to the states and to the people. Just following that amendment alone will reduce an incredible amount of disharmony and crime in our country. In the Constitution, there's provision for protection of property rights, and it's designated in the 5th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. And the actual wording is life, liberty, and property. This means that people in public office have a responsibility to protect the rights of life, liberty, and property of all the people in their influence. Can you imagine what would happen if that was observed? Imagine the lawsuits that the county is facing from people who believe that they've been wronged or harmed by our local government. At this podium here, we see countless people coming up who are losing their homes, losing their businesses, and are sometimes not very polite. And it's really annoying to go through a process like that over and over again. But if we had paid attention to that Constitution, that wouldn't happen. I think that we can probably summarize the essence of the Constitution with something our doctor friends came up with, and that's, above all else, do no harm. If, above all else, we did no harm, there wouldn't be any lawsuits. We would still be able to function. And the previous speaker talked about a terrible thing that the federal government's doing. It's borrowing money from our children, $22 trillion worth. That is a real problem we must face, and that would be a good subject for a constitutional amendment. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this item?
Good morning. Vicki Reinke, Calaveras Republicans. Thank you for recognizing our Constitution. Conservatives do believe that our Constitution is the law of the land, and it is not a breathing, living document. It is a document that was written 200 years ago, over 200 years ago, that today still resonates with the people of the United States of America. And I hope that more people will maybe spend this week maybe taking a class from Hillsdale College on the Constitution, or at least reading it, and the Declaration of Independence as well, because that was the basis for writing our Constitution. So we live in the most wonderful country of the world. We don't want to see that changed. And, we stand behind our Constitution and agree that our government is way out of control, and limited government was the key word, and we have expanded our government federally, locally, beyond what we need to. So hopefully, again, this week, people will pay attention to what that means when we talk about limited government. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Constitution for the free speech that I've enjoyed here. I know that I've irritated some of you many times, and I hope that in the future it's no longer necessary. But in regard to the Constitution, as a retired school teacher, I would like to have the children particularly pay attention to Amendment 25 and the removal of the president. He is not appropriate for the proud history that has preceded him, and he is a disgrace amongst all nations.
Sir, this is about this.
Free speech.
I just want to say how pleased I am that it just happens that the afternoon agenda item we'll be entertaining next week on 28 or so amendments to the board's rules of procedure happen to be happening during Constitution Week. How cool is that? We'll talk more about that next week. Thanks.
Any other public comments on this item?
Marty Crane, just one thing. I was always taught that the Constitution was written by flawed men, flawed people in our government, that it was not perfect, that no legislation or policy is perfect when it's first rolled out. A lot of times we have to make adjustments and tweaks and things. We've experienced that locally here, but we don't tend to fix things. We just throw the baby out with bathwater, and causes a lot of consternation in the community and division, and I'm really tired of hearing that. But I was also taught that the Constitution was a guide. When I hear that it's not a working document, I'm going, so what is it? It just sits on a shelf and collects dust? No, it's a working document. Amending it is difficult, and it was designed to be that way, but it was also, in my opinion, not designed to be used as a baseball bat to beat people over the head to make them believe what you think. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Just a short comment, Chair. Thank you. I think it would be very wise for even our younger folks to go back and review the contentiousness that occurred during the framing of the Constitution. And not only that, but to read the Federalist Papers. And as they attempted to convince the state of New York of the need for a federal government versus a state-only situation. And that's where many of the states were going, was not wanting this federal authority over their daily activity. So I think that both of those documents have some validity, but to understand the men and women who were involved in that process as well. And they, if you look at those people in Boston and how did they relate to the agrarian Virginian, and so it was some very divergent people, but drawing upon the history of other civilizations, other democracies, other republics, and knowing the mistakes that they made. The average lifespan of the best republic prior to the United States was what? 200 years. You think about the Peloponnesian Wars, where men were willing to die at the rate of thousands an hour to support the cause of their nation. And yet in one generation, the loss of 30 caused the demise of the entire nation. That's how quickly things can come apart. So I think we've been able to weather those storms, and the Constitution helps us to ensure that we are able to do that. And I thank you.
I have something to add. Since we're talking about the Federalist Papers, there was also an opposing view during that time. They were called the Farmer, and how they conducted themselves among each other, having opposing views. They did it as ladies and gentlemen, not to the type of discourse that we have now. It's amazing, and I would recommend everybody read those two sets of papers. And there was basically, the Federalist paper was just a set of articles that was written in newspapers, and the opposing had the same in the newspapers, and they were the Farmer. Thank you.
Any board comments? Not, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Supervisor Mills.
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, on this day, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors recognizes Constitution Week and asks the citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties. Passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County, State of California, this 11th day of September, 2018.
There's someone here to accept this. Want to go down and all of us accept it?
I think every citizen of the United States of America, State of California, and County of Calaveras accepts it on behalf of this proclamation. I'd be proud to hold it up and see what it is.
All right, moving on.
Item 7 is from District 1 to proclaim the month of September 2018 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, recognizing the importance of awareness efforts that will increase support for children and families dealing with cancer.
And again, I don't think there's anybody here to accept this one, but we'll read it and put it into record. It's to proclaim the month of September 2018 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, recognizing the importance of awareness efforts that will increase support for children and families dealing with cancer. Whereas 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer by the time they are 20 years of age. And whereas nationwide, almost 700 new children are affected with cancer daily. Whereas, although the National Cancer Institute reports that pediatric cancer death rates have declined by nearly 70% over the last 4 decades, cancer remains the leading cause of death from disease among children under the age of 19. Whereas childhood cancer is not one disease, but instead made up of more than 12 major types with over 100 subtypes. And whereas, as of January 1st, 2014, the most recent date for which data exists, approximately 419,000 survivors of childhood and adolescent cancer were alive in the United States. And whereas the overall outlook for children with cancer has improved greatly over the last half century, more research, treatment, and support for families is needed. So, any board comments on this? Any public comments on this item?
I'm feeling like a ping pong ball today. Marty Crane, I just wanted to say that like so many things in life, if you have not personally experienced this, then you cannot definitively say, I understand. We can try to understand, but there's no way to really know until you have gone through cancer. You cannot know. I wanted to share that the Optimus International, and we have an Optimus Club here in Calaveras. We also have, there's also an Optimus Club in Baghdad. You know, how exciting is that? It's all over the world. And we work to stamp out childhood cancer, and have been working on that for many, many, many years. And I just thought you ought to know that. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
George Fry. I have not been here over the past month, and it's because I have cancer, and they're doing radiation treatments on me now at UCSF. So I've been there. I feel for the children who have cancer and the pain and suffering they must endure. And I truly support this proclamation. Thank you.
Vicki Mills. As a mother who has a child that has now been cancer-free for roughly 22 years, I thank you for this proclamation.
Other board comment, other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Supervisor Mills.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Oliveira. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors that the month of September 2018 is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and hereby calls upon the Calaveras County community to support efforts that will strengthen research, enhance treatment options, and expand support for children and families dealing with cancer. Thank you. Madam Clerk, it is 10:35. Do you need a break?
No pressure there.
We'll break for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, excuse me, 10-minute break. All right, we're back in section from the break. Madam Clerk?
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Okay, and before we start, I want to make it very clear that we're not here to attack other people and what they say. Everybody has a right to their opinion, and it has to do with things that are not on the agenda within the purview of this board. So if you don't like what somebody else said, you don't need to address them. They have the right in their opinion, and you have the right with your opinion, but you cannot, please do not attack someone else and what they said. So, public comments.
joelpitto@gmail.com. I'd like to start with backpedaling a little bit. 60 days ago, my supervisor, Mr. Garamendi, was kind enough to meet me on Gwynn Mine Road to look at the scope of the problem and to try and keep me from interfering with any progress this county could make. He asked me to leave the Department of Emergency Services alone for 60 days to see if we've made any progress. I was also promised by the Office of Emergency Services if I gave my permission for entry onto my property, that I would be kept notified of each move regarding any action to be taken on my property. That has not happened. In fact, Jeremy Denbo was quite cooperative and eager to do his public service and interface with me, and I now know that you guys let him go. It was a time when he was critically needed. It was a time when he was extremely useful and a valuable servant. It's very hard for me to believe that you guys couldn't get Gwynn Mine Road fixed by now, unless there's some malfeasance or some inability to proceed with your duties. I would like to be proved wrong on that. I would like to see the road fixed this year. If it is not fixed this year, I do not know any other course other than a lawsuit or the grand jury to get your guys' attention. You have an obligation to keep the roads maintained, and you're failing totally in an extreme degree that has put the public at risk because emergency vehicles were banned on that road, and that was overruled by the senior fire department leader in McCollum Hill, who went and told the public works director that we're going down there anyway, widen the barricades. So we've got a situation that's legally tentative. I would ask that the county compliance board issue no more violations to the public until they have gotten the county to meet the county code. So if that's possible, please do so. Jack Garamendi, I totally apologize to you for going out of bounds on my objections.
I'm Will Moore from District 5, Rancho Calaveras. And a few moments ago, Supervisor Mills and Supervisor Clapp mentioned the Federalist Papers that they should be taught in high school. Well, the American Revolution ended in 1776. They had a constitutional convention in 1785, I believe it was 85. And before that, the United States operated under Articles of Federation. But the Federation didn't work, and the issue was taxes. None of the sovereign states would collect taxes to pay the bills. That's why we had a constitutional convention. And that's how we got a republic instead of a federation. So the Federalists lost that argument at the Constitutional Convention and at the Civil War. So we should remind the high school students of that part of it. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Mike Falvey, District 2. Mr. Tofinelli, paraphrasing what you said just recently, before public comment, you ask us not to attack anyone of their legal right to free speech, and you stated that you would stop anyone who did. Sorry, sir, I've been watching you let this board insult the public for a few years now. And I find it, quote, disgustingly ironic, unquote, that a certain board member sits up here and under the protection of supervisor's comments talks down to the people of this county, of which I am one, a plain old ordinary citizen. He sits up here and tells us that we're being rude and we're talking disrespectful to this board. I have only seen one supervisor on this board cuss towards the audience. I have seen one supervisor on this board yell at another. I have seen this supervisor point down at you and yell at you. If you're gonna hold us to a certain standard, you need to hold the entire board to that same standard. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Al Segala, Taxpayer Associations. Thank you for the good work you do, and sometimes it's a heroic experience. I had the opportunity to go to Southern California to attend a meeting of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, which was to celebrate their 40 years of Proposition 13. It was very interesting, and what that group is doing is just fantastic. One of the issues that was discussed was Prop 6. Prop 6 is repeal of the gas tax increase. This is kind of interesting. If you go to the state website, where the description of the ordinance is supposed to be unbiased, you're going to be in for a shock, especially if you read the actual proposition, because it's just almost gobbledygook. You get through, if you through what the state says it is, you wouldn't vote for this thing. You know, it doesn't make sense. But if you read the actual proposition, it makes a lot of sense. Some of the facts about this: almost 1 million Californians from all walks of life came together and signed a petition to get the gas tax repealed. This is a repeal of the increase of the gas tax. The tax adds 12 cents per gallon for gasoline and 20 cents a gallon on diesel, and up to $175 annual car license fees. It also requires voter approval for future gas tax increases. That is almost more important than the repeal, because by requiring voter approval, we get away from this bait and switch. The legislature, state legislature, has been putting propositions and laws on the table, and then when people vote for it for the purpose that they say it's for, they use it for another purpose. It could be for choo-choo train, or it could be for anything else, whatever they deem at the time to spend it on. So the support for the opposition to Prop 6 is basically from people that are looking to get the roads fixed, or maybe work or contractors, but it's wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
It's my understanding that there are some code violations on Mr. Clapp's properties. Mr. Short comes here and wants to do things with 8.06 and wants to do things with the trailers that people store things in. Can one of you, just one of you, go to Mr. Short and ask him what's going on with that violation? It's been going on for a long, long time. Just one of you. I want to talk about a public meeting that was held by Mr. Clapp and Mr. Tofinelli at the Veterans Hall. During that meeting, on 2 occasions, Mr. Tofinelli was yelling, "I paid for this tonight! You can't do that!" And then he went on to tell the people that were there, both him and Clapp, that our budget is so black. Where did he get that erroneous information? We're 9.2 million in the red, and another 16.4 million if the lawyers prevail. That's $25.6 million in the red. You guys might as well pack up your lunches and go home, because I tell you what's going to happen. If all of that happens, the state's going to take you over. It's embarrassing to me for people to come and tell me, "Boy, you got a county that is just off the deep end." Just off the deep end. And it's not one person. It's 57 counties that think Calaveras County is nuts. I happen to agree with them. I don't know why Congressman McClintock would stand next to Clyde and say, "I support him." Obviously, Clyde didn't tell him the truth. He didn't tell him about the elder abuse. He didn't tell him about the zoning violations. He didn't tell him about anything. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
I would like to say something about pot and inhibitions, or any drugs causes inhibitions. When people lose their inhibitions, they do things that sometimes they're very sorry for later on. And I feel really sad that it has been proven that pot causes the brain not to develop when it's used under the ages of 24. And I'm very grateful to Supervisor Clapp, Supervisor Mills, and Supervisor Tofinelli, and sometimes Supervisor Oliveira for trying to be careful about allowing this drug to be raised in Calaveras County for all the different reasons that have been brought forth before. And I don't think that the general public has any idea what heroes you are, but I thank you again.
Okay, I left Cortez, Colorado at 11:30 yesterday morning to be here because I want to be at the budget hearings, and I got about 5 hours of sleep at rest stops, so I'm pretty tired, but I really care about this county, and I think there's a lot that we need to be concerned about. The gentleman on Gwen Mine Road is absolutely right. There's no reason why the roads in D2 should be in such disrepair, especially when Little John Road has been paved and repaved twice. Talking to you, Supervisor Mills, if you are interested in what I'm saying, because you're not really paying attention to me. But anyway, I had the great privilege of celebrating my mother's 80th birthday in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Saturday. So it's been a long week of travel. In June, I was gone for most of the month while I drove her up the West Coast to go all the way up to Alaska. She's 80 years old, pretty conservative, but she knows about the benefits of medical cannabis. She's seen her family members do much better under the care of a physician using medical cannabis than we would have fared with opiates. She is a full convert. As we made our way up through 4 legal states and Canada, which is now federally legal, starting in October for recreational as well, I had to point out where the dispensaries were because they blend into the fabric of the communities. The only place we saw riffraff was in front of bars, smoking tobacco, people out in front. And she wondered if those people were homeless, and I said, no, I wouldn't make that assumption, they're just drunk. When we got to Alaska, first we were on a boat, there were dispensaries in every town. It didn't detract from the charm of the Alaskan coast. When we got on a tour bus with a whole bunch of elders, I was the youngest person except a little boy this tall, the tour guide told us about a chocolatier in Talkeetna. Make sure you take your ID because there's a dispensary in the back of this chocolatier. All the elders laughed. They thought it was hilarious, and when they got back on the bus, they joked about procuring cannabis. We are missing a wonderful opportunity. Also, Cortez, Colorado, people are pulling 60,000 an acre of CBD hemp that is being extracted using CO2, which is not explosive. Please tell your big backer to stop talking about all manufacturing as if it's dangerous. It's regulated. It's not. CBD helps people with seizures. We have patients in our midst that cannot access it because of the ban. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Hi, Aurora Weatherby, District 5. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for serving and for taking the abuse that you do take verbally. I've been away for 8 weeks, however, I have watched the board meetings from my home, and I find it really objectionable to me for 2 reasons. You guys are here to serve the public, and I think you try all admirably to do so. Thank you. The next thing I'd like to do is bring attention to the fact of the signs in the back of the room. During my time at home and in viewing these, there was a anti-Clyde Clapp sign that set back there by the door that was in public view of the camera at all times. And when the brakes came, it magically disappeared, and when the brakes were over, it magically disappeared, but it was always within view of the cameras. Today we have a pro sign in the back of the building. There was a discussion on decorum for the meetings that was tabled. I would like to know, what is the policy on signs, yay or nay, on any subject being within the chambers? Whether it's to the view of the public or whether this gentleman blocking this one right now was by design. If we're going to have equal opportunity here to express things or bring signs in, then they need to be displayed in a spot where everybody can see them, including a camera that can be visualized on a video at home. I think it's a good idea to have decorum and good policies in these chambers. I do not like to hear all of the public comment where they berate, belittle, and besmirch the boards of supervisors. And if you go home and you look at these videos and you view them in the comfort of your home, you see just how ridiculous some of the comments are, some of the people's remarks are. We're supposed to be a civilized society. We're supposed to be able to have discussions without berating or besmirching anyone. I have views on the ban. They are my views. Marijuana has not been good to my family. I've lost 4 members to cancer, 1 at 18 months. I am the only survivor of 4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. We'll move on in the agenda to the consent agenda.
Chair, we have members of the fire community here for agenda item 24. Is it possible we could move that up so that they can have an opportunity to get back to taking care of?
You need your staff here.
You need staff here for it? Could we then just possibly, as soon as they're available, move that up?
Well, we're going into consent agenda. I don't know how many of these items are going to be pulled. Can you send a memo to your staff?
Thank you.
There were still people that you were ready to speak.
There was nobody standing there. I said any other public comments, and nobody stood up to come forward.
Mr. Chair, I believe there was movement, just as a matter of observation, by that gentleman when you spoke at that. I don't know if he was going to stand up and speak, but I did.
Okay, well, okay, you need, we've said this before, you need to be in line, so if you, I'll open public comments back up, but you can't wait outside, you're gonna be in line to speak, so I can see. When I call for public comments, so.
Thank you, I apologize for not getting up quick enough.
Okay.
Neil McEwen, Calaveras resident. 803 days have passed since June 30th, 2016, and there has still yet to be a Nexus study published for the implementation of the UO. We've been told time and again that it will be coming soon. We have heard findings from this study quoted by public officials. With access, and a private citizen with certain connections refer to it. Yet still, it has not been released to the public. When is this going to happen? During the meeting on August 28th, a sign was placed on the bottom of the closed-circuit television out in the foyer, which read, and still reads, "The television will only be turned on when there are no available seats in the board chambers." Gary, when you read the sign for the first time, in front of myself and others, you made it clear that you had not authorized the sign. When questioned as to who had made the overreach of public power with the intent to limit the public's access to and knowledge of what was occurring during the meeting, we were told that you would find out and let us know. That also has yet to happen. Any such action should have been an agendized item and required a vote by the whole board. It is imperative that the culprit should be publicly named into the record and sanctioned for usurping the power and integrity of this board by circumventing the due process that all of you have taken the oath to uphold. To quote from Harvard professor Jennifer Hochschild's book, Do Facts Matter? Information and Misinformation in American Politics? The conviction that people make better choices if they possess more correct information lies behind a good deal of public policy. Federal and state laws and regulations require truth in advertising and marketing in many circumstances and forbid not only active deception, but also failure to include materially important facts. To quote Johns Hopkins Sheridan Library's website, Evaluating Information, a case study on propaganda versus misinformation, disinformation. You have now reached the lowest of the low. Never underestimate the evil intentions of some individuals or institutions to say or write whatever suits a particular purpose, even when it requires deliberate fabrication. Disinformation refers to disseminating deliberately false information, especially when supplied by a government or its agent to a foreign power or on the media, with the intention of influencing policies of
Thank
those
you.
who receive it.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. I too apologize for not being in line. I thought he was going to get up and speak, and I was going to speak after him, and I was out looking up the rules and procedures, which are going to be the subject of next week's discussion. But a lot to do with them has come up in today's discussion. I've heard citizens talk about other citizens behaving in what they believe to be inappropriate ways, and Supervisor Clapp, this morning you brought up, I can't quote you verbatim, but that members of the public were rude to the board, and I've heard members of the public remind you of times when you've been exceedingly rude to them and me, and all of those that you place in a class with me, as well as your other board members. And since there's not going to be time in 3 minutes to cover a fifth of the rule changes that are coming up next week, I want to just point to the red line version of rule number 23, order and decorum. Just the last paragraph of it. Consistent with the purpose of the rules, members are encouraged to use a formal style, including appropriate titles, in addressing the public, staff, and each other. All members shall lead by example. I'll read how it is now and what you're going to propose changing it to. All members shall lead by example and shall refrain from using profanity, emotional outbursts, and personal attacks on one another, staff, and the public. That's how it's always been. The proposed change would then read, all members shall lead by example and are encouraged to refrain from the use of profanity, emotional outbursts, and personal attacks to one another, staff, and the public. People outside of these chambers typically in conversation refer to this as the Clyde Clapp Clause, because nobody knows any other reason why these rules would need to be changed from requiring you to refrain from such behavior to simply encouraging it. And we've been unable to find out who proposed this change of language. It would sure be interesting if that individual would own it and explain it. More next week. Thank you for reopening public comment. Appreciate it.
This will be the last speaker.
Good morning. I would just like to thank this board for doing an outstanding job since they've been seated. And also I would like to say I look forward to the new rules and procedures surrounding the boardroom, because clearly it doesn't feel like a safe place to come. People in the audience get very emotional. I think the board has done an outstanding job sitting there and listening to all of the comments being made against them personally. And I appreciate that you all are still here and in your seats, and that you're trying to make some positive changes so that we all feel safe in this room. Thank you.
All right. We'll close public comment. Now, is your staff here? Okay, so we've been asked to move from consent agenda onto item 24 in order to expedite with fire chiefs that are in the room. So we will move on to item number 24 of the regular agenda. Madam Clerk.
Item 24 is from the Administrative Office to authorize the use of water enhancement special revenue funds to contract out a nexus study related to the in lieu fee and authorize an allocation in a fixed amount not to exceed $10,000 per fire department for the maintenance, repair, and service of water tenders, further directing the auditor controller to reimburse each fire department from the Water Enhancement Fund for expenses incurred as necessary for the maintenance and repair of water tenders and related equipment.
Bonnie, is this your presentation?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bonnie Rich, Administration. I'm going to give you just a very brief introduction of this item, and then I'm going to hand the podium over to Joel Swartz of the Copperopolis Fire Department. I need to make a note in one of the recommendations, and we'll recap again for the clerk at the end of the discussion. Recommendation number 2 asks for reimbursement to each fire department in an amount not to exceed $10,000 for maintenance and repairs to water tenders. That recommendation should be to allocate $10,000 per water tender. There is one district that has actually 2 tenders. And then finally, we may be asking for your board to direct staff to update the old resolution associated with this. So in a nutshell, the Water Enhancement Fund is a special revenue fund that consists of committed funds that the board determines the use of. We have a resolution 95-176, which should be included in your board packet, that defines the use of these committed funds. And generally, the purpose is to serve water delivery services for those outlying rural areas in the unincorporated territories of Calaveras County, where as folks pull building permits to build new homes, if they are not served by hydrants and other fire suppression services in those areas, they have the option to install water storage tanks or pay an in lieu fee of $900 when they apply for that building permit. And that $900, known as the in lieu fee, is the amount of money per building permit that is deposited into the Water Enhancement Fund. And per the most recent board-adopted resolution from 1995, essentially that allows for the board to establish the program to develop systems, purchase equipment, maintain the facilities that the fire districts use to house those pieces of equipment and different apparatus to continue the fire suppression services in the rural communities of Calaveras. In a nutshell, that's what this is. At this time, I would like to hand the podium over to Joel Swartz from, he's an Administrative Services Officer from the Copperopolis Fire Department and is the liaison with the fire chiefs. Joel?
Thanks, Bonnie. I first want to say,
Joel, can you announce that what you have there is for the public? I don't think they heard you.
Oh.
And it's a copy of what you just handed out to us.
yes, a copy of what I've just handed out to the board is here available. We could not have gotten to this moment without the help of Bonnie Rich. She's just been phenomenal. That said, in 1992, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors established an in lieu fee for a properly funded water delivery program for Calaveras County properties that are not served by fire hydrants. Applicants for new residences could choose between paying a one-time only in lieu fee of $900 or install an on-site water storage system. The 1992 resolution was rescinded and replaced in 1995 and is the one currently in effect. The Special Revenue Fund was to be administered by the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors and could only be used as may be determined by the supervisors on a case-by-case basis. It could be used for purchasing water tenders, upgrading equipment, housing of apparatus, or fund unanticipated major maintenance and of the equipment. The fees collected since 1992 have been used to purchase 10 water tenders. The last payment was made in 2017, leaving the fund with a balance of $116,547 on June 30th, 2017. The Calaveras County Fire Chiefs Association wants to thank the Board of Supervisors for purchasing and paying for these water tenders that play a major role ensuring the safety and protection of Calaveras County residents, structures, grasslands, and forests. The questions we want to address today are about what needs to be done with the program going forward. The fund balance last year, 78 homes were issued building permits requiring the payment of $900 of the in lieu fee. That brought the balance in the account to $186,609 as of June 30th, 2018. The in lieu fee of $900 has not changed since the original resolution was written in 1992. Just as an aside, the water connection fee charged by CCWD went from $1,608 to the current $11,488. The water tenders. We have 10 water tenders in the Calaveras County fleet that have been built between 1995 and 2007. 6 of them are between 20 and 23 years old, and the others are 14, 15, or 16 years old, and one is 11 years old. The average annual maintenance cost on these water tenders is $8,000. Our Calaveras County water tenders were called out by the Emergency Command Center 226 times last year, from August 1st, 2017 to August 1st, 2018. That's 226 times the water tenders were called out. 114 times were for veg fires, 52 for structure fires, and 49 times were for other fires. Most recently, CCWD planned water outage on August the 22nd to repair a leak in the main water line in Copperopolis. 10 neighborhoods, 14 businesses, including Cruiser's gas station, IGA Market, Family Dollar Store, and all fire hydrants in that geographical area had no water for 6 hours. Because water tenders typically have volunteer coverage, Copper Fire had to bring in an engineer and a firefighter to man the water tender full-time during this period. Also, we had Altaville Fire and Murphy's Fire departments. They were requested to be on standby as well in case something happened. Our added cost for this event was $487 for getting the 2 volunteers to work those 6 hours. The Calaveras County Fire Chiefs has the following recommendations that we'd like you to consider. 1, we're asking for a maximum of $10,000 for each water tender to be used for maintenance and service in the 2018-19 fiscal year. That's $100,000. We're asking for a maximum of $25,000 to be used for a nexus study to determine if the in lieu fee of $900 should be changed. And the third thing we're asking for is a review of the 1995 resolution so it can be updated to conform to current standards. That's the State of California Public Resource Code 4290 regarding minimum fire safety standards for defensible space for all residential, commercial, and industrial building construction, ISO 8 requirements for supplemental water delivery, NFPA 1231 and related standards for an on-site water supply, and NFPA 1903 criteria for upgrading apparatus and equipment. That's all I have.
That's it?
That's it. But you have a copy of everything I just said, and then some.
Okay, board, any questions? Chair Mendy?
Just want to clarify, all the chiefs are on board?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
you bet.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Olivero, your light's on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, how many water tenders we have are 10 active right now?
Yes, sir.
And we have 12 fire districts? Is that correct?
No, we have 10 fire districts and Angels Camp, which is not a, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here.
No, just real quick, we do have 9 fire districts. Keep in mind that you have 10 water tenders, and the consolidation with Foothill, Jenny Lynn, it's just Mr. Clapp's area. When that consolidation occurred, they ended up with 2 water tenders, respectively. Anything that happens in the City of Angels Camp is not being considered or under this this fee whatsoever with the water
So basically, we have 1 water tender for every fire district, except 2 that were consolidated, now we have 2. So we got
Absolutely
1
correct.
for
Yes.
Thank you.
That was Mike Johnson, Fire Chief.
Supervisor Mills?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Joel, you've been working on this for a long time,
Yes, sir.
and this is something that is 23 years delayed. A Nexus study might create a shock in terms of the actual costs that you're incurring, even what you're incurring now with the existing tenders.
Sure.
Not taking into account an amortization schedule to replace them at some point, which the money's not there to do.
Yeah. Also, I think one of the things to consider is the high cost of maintenance to these water tenders. Just a set of tires is $500 for a tire, and they'll have 6 tires on each water tender. So it's going to cost $3,000 just to keep them in tires, and they wear out rather quickly and easily. I don't know how much we can possibly raise the in lieu fee. That would be up to the Nexus study to determine. But once we get an idea of how much money we could potentially raise that to, and then try to project against building estimates of how much new construction there's going to be, we could then make some plans as to what to do to replace these water tenders as they start to deteriorate. Actually, according to the NFPA, the life expectancy of a water tender vehicle is 15 years, and after 15 years, it should be put into backup service. And every one of our water tenders is frontline service.
2 points. I remember there was quite a controversy over whether or not a fire district would be able to put them under cover, get them in a garage or something.
Yeah.
That was one of the issues that came up.
Yeah.
Is that still an issue, or are all of them under cover now?
No. Some of them are parked outside. They're parked where we have space. They're pretty big.
Well, I drive by one that's parked outside all
Yeah.
the time, and I just remember how important it is to get them
Exactly.
under cover.
Yeah. And it's very expensive to build a facility that can accommodate these things.
So in your Nexus study, would you consider the wet rental fees that you would recover from sending these out on strike teams to be included in in that cost recovery component?
I'm sorry, say that again?
When you're sending them out on strike teams
Yes.
and you're making income off of that wet rental,
Yeah.
would you please be sure to include that recovery?
Yeah, I will. As a matter of fact, Copperopolis just made $3,800 by sending our water tender out for 2 days to the Lake Tulloch event that just occurred this past weekend.
And that was in Tuolumne County.
Yeah.
So the point is that some of those tenders are being used by other resources besides
time.
Calaveras County in general.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I just want to be sure that that number is included when we try to figure out what that component might be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll definitely, make sure that we consider all of the elements if you approve the Nexus study. I'm just the liaison for the chiefs, but we have thorough discussions about all of these things, and what I'm representing here represents everything that we've all agreed upon. So anything involving the Nexus study would certainly be agreed upon by all the chiefs as well.
I agree. I appreciate Bonnie's work in this because you're dealing with, to some degree in government speak, ancient history and trying to pull up all of the information that is necessary to make these decisions is difficult at best. So
Yeah.
good job in what you've gotten together to this point.
Yeah, just finding the signed documents was a challenge.
Great. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, I have a little bit of history on this. Actually, these tenders were intended at the time, as you spoke of, to enhance where fire hydrants weren't at and to provide coverage, water coverage throughout the county. That was in '95. However, in 2000, the county itself got out of the fire business, actually '99, and the districts were formed as they exist now. And it was the intent to turn these water tenders over to the district and give them to the district. However, at the time there were some issues, and I think at the time also the intent was to turn this account over to the fire districts, and you could put your Nexus study in whenever you felt like it, and then the fees would go in, and then as money was needed for the tenders. But the problem was they purchased the tenders on time.
Yeah.
And so the account had to stay in place until the tenders were paid off before we could turn them over to the districts themselves. When that time came, it came close. There were some issues with the tenders, and the fire districts did not want to accept the tenders because some of them had rust problems. I think one in Copper had one of the issues with the rust, if you were there at the time. So we had to spend money to upgrade that completely and redo it and fix it in order for the district to even say that they would take it, because at the time it wasn't even usable. So money came out of this account at that time, and it was, I think it's about 2010, around that time period, maybe 11, that we expended the money out of this account to fix that one. And there were some other issues with front ends, I think one in Moke Hill and one possibly in Central, that we had to do some repair work on. And then the intent was to pay them off and turn them over to the district through this account, because this account was initially set up for the payoff of those tenders. It's morphed a little bit as time has gone by, and we've continued to collect the money, and it's in the account. But I think the intent was originally to, at the time when the districts were formed and the county got out of the fire business, was to turn them over completely to the districts for their use and for them to outright own them and not the county. And I don't know exactly if we've got to that point, or the county still has the paperwork on them, or the district owns them. But the intent at the time in 2000 was the county to get completely out of the fire business itself and turn it over to volunteer districts, which were formed at that time. So that's a little bit of history on it.
I could have used that 18 months ago. You put a whole different spin on it.
Yeah, because we had discussion in 2010 on the same issue going forward. And you know, I don't know through the paperwork exactly. I looked at what we have for the resolution, and it talks about several things, but the setting up of the account, I don't see anything going forward on that account. But I know that it was set up because of those time payments, and county was making payments on it, and that account was making the payments going forward until they were all paid off. And I think at one time, we actually purchased one because one of the districts did not have one. I think the one that you're talking about is 11 years old, kind of fits in that time frame of 2009 or so. It might even be 2009 when we were talking about this, that we actually purchased one through this account and obviously it got paid off in 2017, last year. But that was the whole scenario and what was going on. Now, as far as using the money on the account going forward or keeping it in place to use it for maintenance, I'm sure that's probably something that could be somewhere in here. But I know originally it was set up originally to pay off those tenders because it was a loan that we had received to pay them off. So I don't know if that helps.
Well, you know, the position I took whenever I start to investigate anything is where are we now and where do we want to go? So the where are we now, as I understand it, is it's your account, you own it, you guys make the decisions.
Yep.
You make the choices. So based on that, you know, we have the money, we have the need, you make the decisions.
And I think it fits into the category of using that account for the maintenance, which you're speaking of.
Yes.
Because it will still provide what it's intended to do. And I guess the county council might have something to say to that, but it seems to fit into that program of maintaining those now in order to, and even maintaining an account for future purchases going forward.
Sure.
To replace the ones that are aging. To me, it fits into that category of what the intent was set up. But I would like to have it set up and get it out of the county's purview and set it up where it's within the fire district's purview but the thing would have to be that you make sure that that money is being spent specifically on the tenders.
Yeah.
And the maintenance program of them and the purchase of those as
Yeah.
you want to replace the aging ones that need replacement, so.
I think the prudent thing to do for the moment is kind of leave it the way it is, get your approval to spend up to 10 grand for each water tender. You know, we submit the bills and you reimburse us for it. Let us do the Nexus study and see what we learn from the Nexus study so we can make a determination of what an appropriate thing is to do with this particular account. It may be that, you know, in the best case scenario that I was able to track down was in uh, 2016 when, because of the Butte fire, there were 158 permits that were provided. They were all original first-time payments. So we got 158 people paying the $900 fee. That's the biggest number I've been able to track down. Prior to that, in 2015, there were 42 homes. In 2017, there were 90, and last year there were 78. So at $900, we're not talking about a whole lot of money for the, you know, for the fund. So the best use of that is for maintenance of the equipment. After we get the Nexus study done, and if business hopefully picks up and building construction starts to pick up, we may have recommendations as to what we think would be a more appropriate use for the funds. But for now, just helping us out with the maintenance, keeping that equipment rolling is really important to us.
Supervisor Mills.
I'd like to bring two other things into the mix. One is, you recall the Oakland Hills fire.
Sure.
You took hydrants, we took hydrants, and they were good for, what, 30 seconds or a minute?
Yeah.
And they were done. Just because you have a hydrant, there's no guarantee you got water. So we have to always consider that in this as a backup plan of saying, how do we ensure that we have an alternate source?
Yeah.
And those tenders are our only option. So I want you to consider that also as you look at this Nexus study.
Yes.
Of saying, like you said to Copperopolis, it's not just there, it's in other areas as well.
Yes.
Is that all it takes is one glitch and an entire community's at stake.
Yes.
So I'd like to defer, if I could, maybe put somebody on the spot here. I see a former CAO, Mr. Harrington's in the audience. Do you have any information or anything that you might be able to add to this discussion, sir?
Hi, Brent
Brent Harrington. It is a little weird to sit in the audience and hear you talking about something that basically was created when I was here. And I think I've heard a fair representation of it. The only thing I would add to it, at least in the time up until I left in 2001, it was just this huge battle over who was going to get the first engine or the first tender, who was going to get the second one, who was going to get the third one, and there were continuous battles over that. It's nice to see that it seems like it's past that and every district has something. Other thing I can add is I don't think we ever anticipated when we set it up that the money would be used for maintenance, because the sense was we'll be buying these for a long time and then start replacing them. Now, that all being said, I left in 2001. It's 17 years later. Circumstances have changed. At least in my mind, maintaining the vehicles makes a certain amount of sense. But, you know, assuming there's a continued growth of some form, you are going to need to replace these. And what are the way to do it than this method? So, you know, to me, it's from my perspective, I'd probably vote for this. But at the same time, I would be concerned about when these folks are going to be back in 5 years saying we need more vehicles. You have a better memory about what happened after that than I do.
Yeah, we had this same discussion back then about replacing them and maintenance on them, and that was the intent, to turn them over to the districts and the account also, because it was ongoing, to replace them. There was talk of some maintenance on them. But obviously, the replacement is what was the big issue going forward.
The only question I had sitting in the audience that I don't know that if I heard it answered was, have all of these been transferred in ownership, therefore liability to the districts? Because that was absolutely the ultimate plan, to remove the county from the liability standpoint. So in this case, if that occurred, you're providing money, much like a grant. But that's the one question I had, is who actually owns the vehicles now? Yes.
They have been transferred.
I think we have the pink slips on these things. I know our insurance covers it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that was the big discussion at the time also, and that's why we had to do some repairs, because they weren't going to accept them in the conditions they were.
Right, exactly the point.
Yeah, so we did a lot of repairs. The one in Copper replaced the whole cut underneath. One in Moke Hill and one in Central, we did some repairs on, so we bring them up to standards that they would accept them.
And my vague remembrance, again, this had to be before '01 when I left, my vague remembrance was one of the ones, which would have been probably no more than a half dozen of them at that time, got in an accident. And I think we used the funds in this account to pay for that repair. So that kind of idea of using it for maintenance, repair, whatever you want to call it, has been used before.
Thank you, Brett. Any other board comments? If not, we'll open up to public comment. Any public comments on this issue? We have one.
Right now, Burson has a firehouse, but nobody's there. And back when this fire tender thing happened, we had a firehouse, and we had a fire engine located in Burson. And some of our town fathers, or whatever you want to call them, discovered that most of the money was coming from the West County area to pay for the water tenders. And they took exception that the revenue was coming from our area, and yet we already had a water tender, and so therefore we didn't get anything from that fund. And so I'm just wondering, where is the revenue coming from now? Is it coming from a particular spot, or is it evenly spread out? I know this sounds mean, but I just don't, I guess I like fairness. Thanks.
Any other public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Do you want to answer the question question, I think we've answered the question, Patty. The money's coming from when you get a permit to build a home and you don't have any fire hydrants nearby that you can be utilized, then you have a choice of buying a water tank or paying $900 into a fund. That's what this fund is for, to pay for this. So that answers your question.
No. What I'm asking is, where is the money coming from? What areas of
All of Calaveras when you pull the building permit.
Okay, back when all this was happening before, they broke it down per area so that you knew what area was producing this revenue.
That has to do with the property taxes that for each district. That had nothing to do with this.
No, it did have something to do with this,
It's
and it
coming
was
from
a
fund.
big deal.
This money is coming from a fund throughout the county when you get a building permit.
Chair,
Okay. Yes.
I was at the 1992 meetings they were having, and there was one district not paying the fee on that. So I don't know if that's still the way it is, but I know there was a huge fight over it because they're the ones got the first tender. So I like, if they do the nexus study, I like for them to check into that, if all districts are paying the same fee.
Say what you just said again?
He's saying go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
1992, when they did this, that there was one district that was not paying into this fund when you pulled the permit. And the only one I could think of possibly might be Ebbets Pass, but I'm not sure.
Chair, that's not correct.
That's not correct?
No. It's Altaville Maloney's.
What?
Altaville Maloney's.
Oh, Altaville Maloney's.
I'm glad to see we got that taken care of. I was ready to go to bed.
All right, so it's back at the board. Is there any other board comments, questions? We'll ask for a motion on this issue.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the use of the enhancement special revenue funds to contract out the nexus study, and then also to authorize an allocation in a fixed amount not to exceed $10,000 per water tender for the maintenance, repair, and service of tenders, and then directing the auditor as follows.
Yeah, I would second that motion, Mr. Chair.
A motion by Supervisor Mills and
One more quick comment, if I may. One of the action items that Joel has requested that is not included in the original item is to direct staff to work with council and the fire districts to review the resolution 95-176 to determine if it needs to be updated to meet current fire standards per the National Fire Protection Association and Public Resources Code.
So Chair, I would concur that to work with staff then to ensure that
And then we could bring that back when we have
we'll have to bring it back.
yeah, bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it back
We would bring the results of the Nexus study back to this board,
and do it at that time.
and we could do it at that time.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, the motion by Supervisor Mills stands as quoted?
Yes.
There's no need to amend any second then?
No.
So your second stands?
My second will stand as the original motion by Supervisor Mills.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And we're approaching 12 o'clock hour, and we have a date out in the
Here it is right here.
front of the building here.
1995, Altaville Maloney's, right there.
Altaville Maloney's across, or is that Angels?
No, that's.
Does anybody wants to pull anything off the consent agenda? Is anybody, before we take a break real quick, I've been asked by Supervisor Garamendi, anybody from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
What night?
Item 14 and item 17.
I would do item 19.
Item 19. Anyone else? Anybody from staff? No? Anybody from the public? Yes.
Item 13 and item 17.
17's already been pulled.
Okay. Item 10.
Hold on. And You want item 10? That was Mr. Moore. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items pulled. So we take a motion for the remainder of the consent agenda.
I'll move the remainder.
I have a motion by Supervisor Mills for the remainder. Do I have a second? Second. A second by Supervisor Garamendi. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. When we come back, we'll do the pulled items on the consent agenda.
There you go.